Hello YouTube, just going to do a quick video about my Capcom Vs SNK games I have for 6th generation consoles, the Dreamcast, PlayStation 2 and original Xbox respectively. So let's take a look at Capcom Vs SNK. This is the base version of the game released on the Dreamcast. This came into Sega Park as well as an arcade game back in 2000. It wasn't that popular unfortunately because they raised the price from 50p to £1 a go, so it did lose out a lot. A few people played it but not many. I bought this when it first came out, but didn't play it that much. It really played second fiddle to Marvel vs. Capcom 2. It was a bit underwhelming for me, I have to say. 4 buttons, not really a problem with that, but you expected more from that Capcom vs. SNK. It was really a big thing. It was during that time, however, when 2D fighters were not in fashion, so, you know, it is what it is. This version, unfortunately, does have a lot of glitches. Pro players will be able to tell you that, but it doesn't really matter to me because I'm certainly not at their level. It does have an interesting secret shop and groove point system. The secret shop system is a little bit convoluted. For example, if you wanted to, let's just example, play against Morrigan in the game, you'd have to beat the game with all Capcom characters. You'd then have to buy the secret factor from the shop. That's basically the right to play against Morrigan. And then to play against, you've got to play the game in Capcom groove, get over 60 groove points before the third fight, and then with at least 4 super combo finishes. So that just shows you how convoluted that is. It did give me a reason though, however, to play the game, so it's not all bad, but it could have been explained a lot better. Thankfully there are some good guides online. Okay, so the next game here is Capcom vs SNK Pro. That's really an upgrade to this. It was only released in Japan on the Dreamcast. A PlayStation 1 version was released in the US and the UK, EU, respectively. That version, unfortunately, is pretty watered down compared to the original Dreamcast version. The big addition there is the new characters Dan Hibiki and Joe Higashi from Fatal Fury. There, Capcom SNK, respectively. They've also done some balance fixes. They've squashed some bugs in the game, and there have been a few improvements made to the fighting system. Still a bit underwhelming though, but I'm glad I've got it. It's a shame though that they didn't amalgamate these two games here, with the secret shop and the improved fighting system from Pro, but you know, it is what it is. Really, I think the best way to think about this game, Capcom vs SNK Pro, is like Capcom vs SNK Tournament Edition, as you just go straight into the action and get on with it. So there we go. Now, Capcom vs SNK 2, I remember that being in Sega Park very briefly, only the demo version was in, but there we go. For some reason, I have got 2 copies of that game. I have no idea how. I remember buying one of those copies back in the I think it was Video Game Centre in Winton or Bournemouth. That's quite a famous place back in the day, but no longer with us. The second copy, I have no idea how I got hold of that, but there we go. I know that's a tournament standard. I'm not sure about the new Capcom Fighting Collection 2, how that will be received, but that's normally the standard they use at tournaments, as far as I'm aware. Yeah, that was again, there was only a Japanese release on the Dreamcast. Really, the Dreamcast was finished by then, so there we go. That came out as one of the last games I really bought for the Dreamcast when it was still coming to its last legs, unfortunately. I will say that with regarding the Capcom vs SNK Pro, just quickly, they did have a PlayStation version of Pro released in the UK and the EU, but that was really watered down because the PlayStation wasn't up to the Dreamcast. Something to do with the PlayStation, that's a 32-bit console, so it is what it is. But strange that it came out in 2002, long after Capcom vs SNK 2 had come out, so a bit of a step down there, but again, that's Capcom's decision, not mine. I did like number 2. It was a pretty good game for me. Shame I never got to play it much in the arcade. It was really only on the Dreamcast console at home. But I certainly got my money's worth, even though I paid about £60 or £70 for the import version. And there we are. So let's move on now to the PlayStation 2 version of Capcom vs SNK 2. So this was probably the only way if you wanted to play the, shall we say, unmodified version of Capcom vs SNK 2. I mean, it's not as good as the Dreamcast version according to some professional players, but you know, it's okay for casual players if you want to have just a PAL version of the game without any of the alterations that I'll show in the Xbox version in a moment. But yes, I bought that cheap. I can't really tell the difference between that and the Dreamcast version, but pro players certainly will be able to explain what the differences are there, and I'm afraid I'm not one of them. Okay, so this is where it's a bit controversial here. This is something called Capcom vs SNK 2 Easy Operation. This was released on the GameCube and the Xbox respectively. So you've got the Xbox version there. Now, the controversy about the EO, easy operations. In fact, you only need to do one button or hit a joystick direction to do a super or a special move. And a lot of players didn't like that because it completely ruined the game. My friend liked that sort of stuff in Marvel vs. Capcom 1, so he'd probably really dig that, but a lot of the pro players didn't like it at all, and most people would just ignore that. It doesn't make it necessarily a bad game, but I would try and avoid EO if you can, but again, how you play the game is entirely up to you. These will be coming out on the Capcom Fighting Collection 2, which will be released probably around the time I make this video. So if you want to play online, I guess that's the way to do it. Most of those are going to be the arcade versions. In these versions, certainly in these games here, you do have the option to edit the colours, if that's something you're really into. I think back in the day you could actually take the VMU to an arcade and play. I know you could do it with Master vs. Capcom 2, the Japanese version, not sure about these. But you could edit the colours and have your own colour. So I guess that's one advantage these versions still have over the forthcoming versions. But again, the forthcoming versions will have the more superior online, I would say. Now, what I'll quickly talk about is the Japanese version of Capcom Vs SNK 1 base, and these versions here are all playable online out there in Japan. They use something called KDDI to connect the Dreamcast together. That's a special proprietary system they use for Japanese telephones. They are trying to reverse engineer that at the moment, so if so, you may be able to play those Capcom Pro and Capcom SNK 2 on the Dreamcast. Not that one, unfortunately. The PAL version had it removed entirely, but if you got the Japanese version of the base game, that might be a possibility. There's only so much, even they managed to get the online going for the Japanese versions there. There's only so much you can do with that because it wasn't designed for broadband, designed for the Japanese telephone system, which is restricted on the amount of bandwidth it can give you. The PlayStation 2 version was never online, and Easy Operation was playable on Live. As you can see, that was an Xbox Live game, so made that up on the new Insignia thing if that's something you want to play. Again, I understand that the PlayStation 2 and the Xbox version have got alterations that professional players don't like, but again, that's down to them, not me. So you play whichever game you want to play and enjoy it accordingly. But anyway, that's just a quick overview, Capcom vs SNK. I'm sure everyone will be looking forward to the Capcom Fighting Collection 2 when it comes out. Thank you very much for watching. Bye-bye.